Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of The X Button. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is Mr. Blue Shirt, blue collar worker.
That is me,
How you doing,
literally.
Paul?
How you doing?
You're a literal blue collar job.
That is exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm cosplaying for the next Spider-Man villain. I am doing all right. It's been a interesting weekend. I didn't get to play anything really outside of one thing that I'll talk about in our other episode, and also one thing that I want to get into either today or tomorrow with enough time to actually talk about it on Wednesday. So what about you? How you been doing?
It's been a week also, especially because now my family's business has been like booming. Right now it's being a little bit more busy than I would have expected. So in fact, like especially in the rental business around these times, booming, I tell you, a lot of people. So hopefully we can record this on time before I have to receive some tenants soon. So
Okay.
yeah, and also there's a few things that I've been playing, kind of a continuation from what I mentioned last week, which we'll talk about more when we reach to that section. But more importantly, the biggest news, Paul, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Today is
anniversary of when you got married, right? There you go.
Yes. 1 year ago today, I got married to the love of my life. I mean, we get sappy here sometimes, but it's been awesome. She's a nerd as well. She likes to game sometimes, but the best part of it is she lets me sit in the driver's seat. So I get to do all the fun things. And we're working through the Uncharted series right now. We just finished through Resident Evil 8, and we play a bunch of co-op stuff like It Takes Two. And I want to get another game called Kiwi, and we'll try to see that, and maybe one day I can talk about it on our What We've Been Playing. But yeah, that's the biggest news for me, at least.
Yeah, so enough of that, because we gotta get through this one because of some things that I need to do later. So
right, let's kill.
Paul, press X
for some news.
All right, Paul. The theme of this week is quarterly earnings, because this past week they all had their they had to report to their stockholders, and sometimes when they report to stockholders, interesting announcements happen or news. Like in this case, number one, we mentioned this kind of like it broke around the time that we recorded our what have we been playing last week, and it was that Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4, which still don't have a tentative release window, have been announced to be further delayed, with them saying that they're citing the need for further development amid some behind-the-scenes changes that happened to the company following the reckoning the mega publisher has been facing with the lawsuit. So in this case, a bunch of Overwatch people were fired, and in the case of Diablo 4, the director of the game was removed. So they had to change of leadership there. So
it's funny that they can encompass the entire absolute crazy roller coaster that has been going on with Blizzard and Activision as some behind the scenes changes. That is to just bottom of the barrel squeak by with, we've had a couple of things happen here and there. We wanted to get ourselves together before, we tried doing all this. I mean, you said it yourself. The only reason they even released the trailer for Overwatch 2 and announced it was because of all of this in the first place. They're not even close.
In that case, it was Blitzchung. And what's insane is that them announcing Overwatch 2 meant that they stopped supporting Overwatch 1. And Overwatch 2, literally the only thing that's going to change is that they're adding a campaign. Other than that, it's so insane that they announced that, killing basically all the momentum of that first game. And now this being further delayed, what's going to even happen to Overwatch? And Diablo 4, let's not even get started with that. And especially Diablo takes forever to make. Like, remember, Diablo 3 took 12 years to make, because their mantra was that they were going to release it until it was ready. But Activision has been like pushing Blizzard to be like, screw you with your getting it out when it's ready. We need money. We need it now. And how does that fit now with the fact that these changes are all happening despite them originally responding? If you remember back in the days when this lawsuit started, that it was all BS, that they were just coming in, they didn't care about the art and all that.
Yeah.
This is pretty damning. So I kind of feel bad and don't feel bad in a way, because I don't feel bad for like all the reckoning that's happening to the bad people. I just feel bad for developers and fans of this kind of series, that they now have to be waiting for more. But yeah, we'll see what happens next, because like we said with Activision, because everything has been sacrificed at the Call of Duty altar, they have nothing. So they have to keep hoping that Call of Duty can still hold the arc.
And we'll see how the sales and ratings actually do for Vanguard, which is already out.
Yeah, came out last Friday.
Got it. Okay.
I didn't buy it. My brother bought it on PC. I'm waiting a little bit until he's kind of stopped playing for a little bit, just to kind of go through that campaign and be done. I'm not paying a cent, like I mentioned. So number 2 with this one. During the earnings call, Square Enix made a frank announcement as to how they view the results of their live service game, Marvel's Avengers, citing that one of their key learnings was that in order to make a proper live service game, you need to have a developer that's properly equipped to make that kind of game. In short, they have conceded that using a developer whose wheelhouse is single-player games making a live service game was a mistake, and that the game is seen as a disappointment for the amount of money they sunk into it versus the amount of money they expected they would make. Which is, by the way, editorial note, is par for the course when it comes to Square Enix ridiculous high expectations when it comes to games from their Western studios, where they always say they underperformed from their expectations when other studios would be happy with those kind of numbers. Also of note, Marvel's Avengers is the 7th best-selling game of the year according to the US NPD from when that game came out in September 2020 to now. And also it's the only non-sequel game that has cracked that top 10. And it was given the green light for more content to come in 2022, with November 30th being the day the Wakanda-themed raid, which by the way is the game's first raid ever, is going live alongside some quality of life improvements and the PS4, PS5 exclusive release of Spider-Man. No shit! Of course, you're not going to put someone whose wheelhouse is single player and make this kind of game. What have I always been saying about this game, Paul? Everything that's single player story focus of the Avengers game, it's really good. Maybe not the best, but you see the brilliance of Crystal Dynamics kind of shine within all this stupid framework. This is like, it's laughable that it's like, this is the learning. Of course, this was not gonna go well when you put someone that's not equipped, has never done a multiplayer game.
Square Enix has the weirdest perspective on the stuff that they do. They don't understand why what they do works sometimes, and then they do crap like this where they talk about how it's like, oh yeah, Marvel's Avengers, like, oh, who would have thought that this team that works on single player games wasn't made to make a looter shooter, and then also make things like First Soldier and the weird Chocobo racing game. And like, I swear the only things that are keeping them alive right now are Final Fantasy XIV and now the remake.
And here's the thing. How do you have Final Fantasy XIV, legendarily one of the greatest comeback stories of all time, when that game launched in 2010, so horrible, they had to literally take the game out and rework it and remake it basically into A Realm Reborn. And that was like one of the more successful MMOs out there. In fact, it's so successful now that they were able to like hit the capture lightning in a bottle so perfectly, because right now where World of Warcraft is a complete dumpster fire. Yeah. And a lot of content creators for World of Warcraft left and moved to Final Fantasy. They couldn't have a bigger success there. But they have the data. They knew what happened, what needed to happen for that game to become the success it needed to be, to the point that right now it's probably one of the most beloved Final Fantasies ever. The hype that I see about this Endwalker expansion that's coming out, that was recently delayed for the first week of December, so good luck, Halo. It's like, they have the data, and they still did this. And here's what happens. I bet you they were like, Avengers is the biggest property right now in all of entertainment. Look how much money Endgame did. Our game is gonna be just as successful. Despite us putting Crystal Dynamics, it's never not gonna has never done this kind of game. We're gonna put so much money to this unproven idea because it is the Avengers. I bet you that's what happened. They were like, they saw the numbers in the movies and they didn't really read the room correctly, and it's not going to be worth the cost. This game could have come out much earlier had it not been a live service.
Yeah.
That's
what I think of is I picture the Square Enix building, and within it is a whiteboard and a room of people, and they say, all right, well, here is a list of the biggest properties in the world that we can throw a bunch of money at, and then over here is the genres of games that sell the most, and of course on the top of both is Marvel and looter shooters, and they go, these two make the most money all of everything,
and
why don't we put them together?
Here's what's funny. I bet you that board was there in like 2014 and 2015 before the looter shooter bubble popped.
Yeah,
which is again kind of like the worst part about you following trends sometimes, that trend has been long moved, because looter shooters are not the most successful thing right now. The only one that has managed to kind of coast by is Destiny, and even then Destiny right now is going through, like, it's like typical in that game's life cycle. It's a roller coaster. We were in the top of the roller coaster for a little bit, and now we're in the low, especially with the announcement that they're removing the Forsaken campaign and all that, and citing all the controversies again about the acceptance of it being the only MMO that it's removing actual paid content from the game, despite them having justified it as saying that they're doing it to kind of be able to properly develop that game because their tech kind of sucks.
Yeah,
it's like that's a genre just ripe with disaster. Like, it's not a smooth, it's not a genre that you're going to smoothly, how can I say this? You're never going to do a looter shooter and always be roses and petals. And just give me a second. We're going to stop this recording a little bit. I got to see something.
Okay.
And I'm back from that little interruption that people are not going to notice thanks to editing. And kind of like I was saying, how the looter shooter genre is just ripe with errors. Like, it's not always going to be a smooth ride.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for them face planting with Avengers that way, because you should have known. Especially like if you're a looter that's coming out that late in the generation, literally the final year of a generation, after one of the most notorious false starts with the original Destiny happened so early. You got no excuse, because you absolutely have no excuse. You should have known.
And what I was thinking before we ended our talk on that is that the thing with live service games in general, just getting away from the idea of just the looter shooters, is that you're never going to be judged based on the release and then supporting that initial effort. Live service is always going to go up and down at the best of times, because you're always coming out with more content that needs to be judged based on it, and then looking back you're going to be able to judge based on the whole thing as well. The problem with this is that they were thinking of it like, okay, we're going to put out Marvel's Avengers, that's going to be it, they're going to judge that, and they're just going to keep buying it if that's what they were really wanting. But the problem with that is, just like with Destiny, you can have a really great season and then you can have a really terrible season. It's going to stop you from wanting to buy anything else until you're like me, where you come back after 2 or 3 years and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, it kind of vibes with me now. But then as of right now, I've dropped it again because there's not anything that I want to play outside of general things.
Same here. I've dropped Destiny 2 right now because even Bungie said this month of November, there's nothing. Right. If you haven't caught up on anything, this is the time for you to catch up. If you haven't already done anything you want to do, take a break. Come back on December for a 25th anniversary thing. Here's what's so funny. You know that Square Enix has in it the greatest MMO that respects players' time and commitment? They're the ones that tell you, once you're done, go away, take a break, come back when we give you more. Others live service, like if I feel like the live service model seems like it's budgeted in a way that they just want your attention 100,000% of the time.
Like Red Dead Online.
Yeah. So
where literally the only thing keeping people going is the gold that you get every day for logging in and doing challenges. And if you get off of that streak, many people just don't ever go back to it, like me, because once you've broken that streak, you're like, oh, I'm not going. Like, it's like you get snapped out of hypnosis.
It's like a full-time job. That's the problem.
Is.
It's like when all these games are designed in a way that they want people to treat them like full-time jobs, you can't have 10 full-time jobs running at the same time and expecting all players to dedicate the same amount of time. Kind of like I've always been mentioning, why you did this topic when we brought back topics a few weeks back, even a month back, about some of the things that we want games to remove. And I just want people to remove the need for a live service. Yeah. Look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Such a, like, the more I haven't finished it yet because I have been playing other stuff that I kind of don't want to let go right now. So I can just play everything when I really want to play it. I just keep hearing so many good things of people that beat the Guardians of the Galaxy game. And also the common thing is like, thank you for not shoving in all this live service bullshit that you can see how it just makes games objectively worse. That is a fact. And with Avengers, it's always gonna be that bittersweetness of, you see the greatness in one side, you see the garbage in this other side. And obviously this quality of life improvements that are they're introducing November 30th, they're supposed to streamline a little bit of the grind of the service element of gearing up and all of that, because that game is a nightmare of currencies. There's like 10 different currencies for upgrades and all that.
You did so well is because they had like a quadruple experience or something going on.
Exactly. Imagine it. Only reason why you would be engaged is because they're quadrupling the experience. That's when you know you've tuned your game wrong. If you need to like incent, because there's double XP. That's like, oh cool, this is double XP. When you have to quadruple something, you know you did something wrong. And let's not even forget, because I don't even think we touched upon this, they added a pay to win scenario like around the time they released the game on Game Pass. To like they put XP boosters, fragmentation boosters, after they had said when the game originally was revealed in E3 2019 that they wouldn't do that. And they were in silence for 3 weeks before they came in with a statement be like, we're sorry we didn't listen, like, we're sorry we did this, we didn't think it was gonna be that bad, but it clearly wasn't, so we're removing it at the end of the day, and we hope this is the moment where we can start rebuilding your trust. That is the cycle of the live service garbage. And I am kind of glad that, unlike Anthem, which this game has been compared very often, that's what's so funny, a lot of people are like, this feels like it's gonna be the new Anthem. The only difference is that Anthem was killed at the crib. This one has been allowed to become like a 2-year-old almost, at least. It's with growing pains. Apparently, when they started doing MCU style costumes that they sell, because that's another thing that I think they massively regret, is the monetization aspect they chose for this.
Yeah.
They obviously it's a full price game. Obviously it's been on sale many times. The only thing they said that they were gonna monetize was cosmetics. And those cosmetics can be really cool looking, especially the MCU costumes they're perfect. They're like $15 a pop sometimes. That's insane. So in a looter, you want to charge for expansions. The War for Wakanda thing was really good. That came out in August. I really enjoyed my time with that. In fact, everything that was adjacent for Wakanda is what led me to push the 200-hour mark with that game. So back in August. And I bought the $20 endgame edition basically because it had some MCU costumes in it. I wanted to give them that because it's like, I'm pretending this is a $20 expansion, because I felt like an expansion that had they added a little bit more, it would have been worth like what we buy with Beyond Light. Even that Beyond Light is twice the price.
True.
They should have made it clear, expansion content we're gonna charge. That way it's a guaranteed thing. Maybe they can make it even more meaty, because if it's free, they're not gonna make it as meaty as it could be, because if you're only relying on cosmetic in a looter, it's not gonna make the money, especially when the big problem with the loot system of Avengers is that you don't see your loot. You don't. That's the point of a looter.
Yeah.
Make it like, grab your loot that's gonna give your character better stats and better looks. They have uncoupled the looks with the stats. That's why that game is a problem. And that's why it's only really good when you're engaging in content that doesn't require you to grind. for like endgame stuff. I don't know how much longer this game has. At the very least, they made enough money with cosmetics to give another year, because they said they announced a roadmap until 2022 right now. That's more than Anthem ever got. But with Square Enix always throwing their Western studios under the bus, that's what makes it funnier, because they are never happy with how their games do. Did I send you, this was in our chat, did I ever send you those images of them saying Tomb Raider disappoints, Hitman disappoints, or something like that? Like Avengers didn't make its money.
And
then Hitman 3.
I've heard them over and over again. It's like they just can't be pleased by anything that's not their own studio seemingly making stuff, which sometimes does even worse. And they're like, oh, this is fun because our country made it. And like, I'm starting to sense a pattern here.
Oh, absolutely.
It's always the Western
all the time. And that's what's funny. Then Hitman 3 released this year, and they made enough money that IO was so happy it's their most successful game now. What does that tell you? And Square owned IO before, and they let them go. Their expectations are out of this world. I don't understand it. Yeah. But enough of that. I'm excited to reinstall Avengers just to play as Spider-Man. I want to see what they do with Spider-Man. I got the version that is going to have Spider-Man. That's another bittersweet moment. What if Spider-Man wasn't an exclusive? Spider-Man is what would bring people back.
Amazing.
There is a Spider-Man movie this year. Like,
because Sony owns Spider-Man, sort of, but not really.
Yeah, it's sort of not really. Imagine if all the systems that have this stupid game had access to Spider-Man literally 2 weeks before the Spider-Man movie. And now just PlayStation people have it. This sucks. Like, everything about how Square has handled Avengers, I'm just calling it, is an abortion. It really is. Like, it really is. And I say that as someone that, against his own will, loves that game.
Yeah, you have a very abusive relationship with that game.
It has a good core to it. And when something has a good core, it's Stockholm Syndrome. Number 3.
That's a whole problem that you're going to have to deal with one day. Anyway.
Yeah, especially I'm going to talk about Stockholm Syndrome and Metroid Prime 2 in our next section. So
that's exactly what I was going to bring up.
Yeah, so number 3 is still in earnings reports. Take Two, Stern. Take Two Interactive, the parent company of Rockstar and 2K Games, announced to their investors they have a staggering 62 games in development to be released on consoles, PC, and mobile by March 2024.
I don't believe this for a second. You want to know why?
I believe it. It's precisely for this. They mentioned mobile. How easy it is to make a mobile game. How easy it is to just put a piece of crap over there and call it a game. I can see the next 2 years being like 4 console and PC games and 58 mobile games.
Yeah. I was almost going to say, like, through all of that, because Take-Two Interactive does a ton of things. So I'm like, okay, well, let me give them a benefit of the doubt. Maybe they have their hand in a lot of cookie jars. The fact that
Tiny
it's
Tina?
Games.
Tiny Tina Wonderlands is from them. These GTA remasters that are coming this week is them.
Which they might try to count that as 3 separate games.
They could, because they will, because they're offering San Andreas separately to Game Pass. They're offering GTA 3 to PS Now. So apparently there's a way to acquire all these 3 games a la carte. Maybe that's what they're staggering at it. And
with Mafia.
Yes, obviously. We'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, Mafia is still something that they could release. NBA 2K, that's something they have. Tiger Woods is now going to be a 2K series. That's something that they're going to be releasing. They got the license for that. PGA Tour is still the name EA has, but they lost Tiger Woods license. Okay. So there's going to be 2 competing golf games again. What else?
Obviously, Red Dead market for the professional golf people, let me tell you.
And the Red Dead Redemption remaster we talked about last week, that's also 2K. Take Two.
Still, that's like 15 games, maybe. If I'm really stretching it just off the top of my head. But
Calypso Protocol, the game from the Glenn Schofield from Dead Space, the Dead Space lookalike, that's a 2K game. Whatever's happening with PUBG, because remember there's like they partnered with PUBG to do like a PUBG campaign or something. It was something weird. I can see how they could start stagging all of this. And let's not forget that 2024 or 2025 is around the time they said GTA 6 was coming. So Maybe Borderlands
Take Two
4.
is interesting because as much as we like to talk about the idea of your Ubisofts, your EAs, your Activision Blizzards, Take Two kind of flies under the radar. They keep their parent company really out of the news as much as they can,
Mm-hmm.
and try to focus it on like the developer entirely, with like, as you said, 2K, Rockstar, and stuff like that. I can see that that's a good thing for them, because the longer you're in the limelight, the quicker it seems you fall out of it. But
And look how advantageous it is for them to not be in the limelight. Take Two Interactive has NBA 2K under it.
yeah,
What is one game that is scummy with capital S with its microtransactions? And somehow people don't blast them to the coals the same way they do Ubisoft or EA. Think about
my guess
that.
is because even though it was a slow downhill tick, and then I think, what was it, 2021 or 2K21 was like the worst, but 2K22 I've heard almost nothing about. Outside of it was like, oh yeah, it's good, and that's it.
My brother bought it, played it once, and I haven't seen him play it again.
Yeah, but
So-
I mean, apparently they did better with it this time than they did last time. But so I'm like,
I mean,
yeah.
did I send you the video of the State Farm, Jake from State Farm thing from 2K22?
I don't know if you did. I don't think
You should look it up. It's hilarious. But staying on the Take-Two Interactive boat, number 4, within the earnings call, Take-Two announced that they also canceled an unannounced game from Mafia 3 and Mafia Definitive Edition developer Hangar 13, citing the game cost them $53 million and was going to be a...
live service.
They noted the game wasn't coming together and decided to pull the plug. Thankfully, none of the developers at Hangar 13 have been laid off for now. Good on them, realizing, oh, putting another full-time job in a market that already has 20 full-time jobs for everyone else is not going to be good. And also, let's not forget, we have the mother of full-time jobs with GTA Online that prints us money.
How much money do these people have to have where they can sink $53 million into a game and then cancel it with be like, no, it's not worth it. Let's just chuck that into the bin and keep it going.
I think I read that GTA 5 makes them $1 billion in shark cards. So,
Is that overall or like a year?
a year
Oh
or
my
quarter.
goodness.
I don't know. I just know it's an insane amount of money. Let's not forget that GTA 5 has sold... Let me look it up. Let me see.
And the
GTA.
funny thing while you do that is GTA, or the people that of course are selling it still online, are still giving away for free $1 million of their online dollars each month until GTA 5 comes out on next gen.
GTA 5 has sold 150 million units and it's still selling. Do you know that it sold 5 million units in this last quarter?
Yeah,
Who
it's
doesn't own
right.
GTA 5 at this point?
becoming the new Skyrim.
Yeah, but Skyrim is not 150 million. That's what's funny. This is like dwarfing Skyrim.
It's becoming that whole process of, we're going to put this on everything until you stop buying it.
Yeah, and Skyrim comes out this week, by the way.
The like 10th anniversary.
Yeah, 10th anniversary after 10 years of Skyrim.
Is there anything that they're even adding to it, or
If
is it
you
just
have
like,
these, do you buy the special edition of Skyrim?
Yeah.
You get a free upgrade on PS5. And if you own that, you can pay $20 for the anniversary edition content that includes fishing and a bunch of creative suite content. Don't know how good that is, but
Can't wait.
yeah, I can't wait to finally... Is this the version that's gonna finally make me play and finish Skyrim? I hope so, because I'm finally in this kick where I'm playing all games and finishing them to completion, thanks to the
And-
year we've had.
I will say the last time that I replayed it, I was just thinking about it recently, is probably the most fun that I had with the game, because I played it so differently from the way I initially did.
As a mage,
Playing
right?
it like pure mage
Mhm.
with no like extra mods or cheating or anything was honestly really fun. And I got into the character and was like, this guy's not going to be a diplomat. He's just going to like take it as it goes. If somebody comes at him, he's just going to wipe the floor with everything. And he's an orc mage, which is the funniest part. So I thought it was a little ironic.
Here's my thing, like with Skyrim, it's like I never finish it, not because I didn't like it. It's just my life always like threw me curveballs, and I stopped playing because other things would come out. Like only the first time that I stopped playing was because my game bugged out, and I had the PS3 version, the legendary PS3 version that was so busted that informed the design of the PS4. Literally, they said, we saw what happened with Skyrim and we designed a console now so that doesn't happen again. A system with split RAM that the more you play, the game would run at 5 frames a second. You should look at videos of rim lag back in the day. That if you're
I remember hearing about that actually, and I was worried because at the time I didn't understand that it didn't apply to the 360 version. And they were like, oh, if your save gets to be
60
more
hours
than this amount or whatever, it'll like wipe your game potentially.
Yeah, it's not that it wiped your game, it would just make it unplayable. That's the thing. Yeah, it's just imagine running something at 5 frames a second. Imagine now that you know what 60 frames is, having to play something in a slideshow quality. That's what was happening with Skyrim on PS3. It took them almost a year to get that fixed. And on top of that, the DLC was further delayed on PS3. It was like being a Skyrim fan and being on PS3 was the absolute worst. And that was like already the PS3 was always notorious for being the not good choice for multi-platform games. So you were always kind of like in the losing side of having worse ports. That was like the king. That was the cyberpunk of that generation. But at that point, because it only didn't work in one system instead of two with Cyberpunk. So. And the PS3 was always notorious for being bad. It was like, yeah, whatever. But in this case, with Cyberpunk, because it was both the PS4 and Xbox One version, and the same developer was like, go ask for refunds. That's why it got removed.
Right. That's even worse.
Yeah, and that's what Bethesda didn't do compared to Cyberpunk. They were like, we'll fix it. They weren't like, yeah, ask for a refund.
I think that's where, I mean, as much as you can say against Skyrim and what's his name, Todd Howard. Todd Howard. Good lord. They have like this unified communication system where it's like, you know, when one of them says it, it's like speaking for the rest of the company. But then when CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk situation all happened, it was like everyone was saying something different. Nobody communicated with each other. It was just chaos because like the marketing team did their job almost too well, and everyone else is like, no, we didn't say any of that. Why are you telling us these things? Or they would make an announcement and then the rest of the team would find out through an email later that day or the next day even. So it's like, at least they had with Skyrim and Bethesda one cohesive speech moment. It was like, this guy's going to be the one that speaks for us, nobody else is. And eventually they got it working, and now you don't even think about the stuff, that the horrible launch on PS3 for it, all the other stuff. People go back and play that thing like it's the Bible.
Here's the thing though, they got their comeuppance 2 games later. Fallout 76.
What?
It didn't get removed from his...
It didn't get removed, and there's still people that play it. 2, 3, I see commercials for Fallout 76 and their new big update going on. Like they doubled down on it. They held it on. They didn't like hit the hornet's nest. They didn't go crazy with it. They were just like, all right, listen, like there's a couple things that maybe didn't go great, but we're just gonna keep doing this thing. And they kept their head down, so they kept working.
And to be fair with Fallout 76, that was worse, absolutely worse than Skyrim ever was. Even in its worst version. That's like in that case they needed to double down because Fallout 76 was reputation killing disaster. It's like it was the one game that would forever sung, even though it was always like death by 1,000 cuts, that so many games have always been buggy for Bethesda. Like Fallout 3 was buggy, Skyrim was buggy, Fallout 4 was buggy. It was like at a certain point it kind of came at the point where you were like, enough is enough, and at that point it was the worst it has ever been. And it was all versions. All versions were equally bad.
As well, when you think about it, even with all of that happening, people are still excited about what Bethesda has next. It's like, no matter what everyone said about it, and justifiably so, thinking that it was going to ruin their reputation with all of this, they're still out there, and everyone's like, oh, Starfield's going to be awesome, next Elder Scrolls, and what you got?
They are still excited because of who bought them.
But is that really going to control Bethesda's
Yes, because the common theme that was happening from Fallout 76 to Rage 2 to Wolfenstein Youngblood and all those games that were coming in between that very dark Bethesda period, the pre-Deathloop period, that those 2 years, was that Bethesda games had not been selling compared to what the Fallouts and Skyrims that always kept printing money. Everything else, Prey, undersold, Wolfenstein 2, undersold. They were making games that were clearly designed to try to extract more money because they were just not selling at base. It made it seem as like they don't have the financial security. They're doing all these stupid moves. They're not doing the Bethesda classic things. But now that they're under Microsoft, where they have financial security because they bought them for Game Pass content, now they can probably go back and do what they're good at because they have the financial backing of a first party. That's going to take...
That sounds like conjecture, though. It's like, oh, we hope that now that they have the finances, they're not going to make those mistakes. But it's like...
Look at Deathloop.
Yeah.
Arcane was able to do the game they wanted to make out of that because they had the financial security of not only the PlayStation exclusive, but the fact that now they're owned by Microsoft. That's always the advantage of being owned by one of those conglomerates. As much as we hate the idea that they're like sectioning off one complete console away, at a certain point it was like, you can't undersell at all just how bad Bethesda was from 2018 to 2020. Especially a year after Fallout 76, they announced Fallout First, the $12 subscription service for like a private server.
Oh yeah,
it was a meme.
I forgot about that.
Like Bethesda was a meme, and ever since they got bought, they kind of have that gravitas to them now. Because now they're like with big conglomerate party over here. So
I'm realizing that they absolutely needed that just as much as Microsoft needed the exclusives.
No, that's the thing. Yeah, it was that was a marriage made in heaven. And because the reality is that Bethesda has never been good to PlayStation people. It never has. Oblivion came a year later. Skyrim shit the bed. It's like they've always had more of a roots with Microsoft. So even though that was such an industry disrupting move, Bethesda is the closest Microsoft has to an equivalent of what Sony did to acquire Sucker Punch, what Sony did to acquire Insomniac, what Sony did to acquire Housemarque. They courted. They're the only ones that they actually really courted. So that's what that ended up making more sense.
Okay.
But with Take Two, we were talking about the cancel game. Supposedly it was going to be a superhero live service game.
Probably best that it didn't end up coming out, honestly.
Yeah, especially because let's just make it very clear. Mafia 3 wasn't very good. It had a great story, but it wasn't this
mechanics for the most part for the shooting. I like the shooting.
Yes, but it wasn't this critical darling. It didn't light the world on fire, let's say.
It was a little heavy-handed.
Yes, it was a missed opportunity for its amazing story. It's like that's one of the better stories of this generation. That's what's ironic. That's a schism.
Like another 6 months to a year of polish, and that game would have been a classic. Not just because I'm, living in New Orleans and it's in New Orleans, and I'm like, hey,
that
look,
would
those buildings.
That would resonate more with you because that game really knows how to tackle racism. That game really nails the tone of that era, like it really does.
Great. And especially knowing some of the actual history that it's based off in New Orleans specifically, like the pictures and old footage are like literally ripped out of the 60s time of New Orleans and Canal Street, where I now work right off of it. So it's funny going down there and you see the palm trees, you see the streetcars going up and down. Not since the Hard Rock Hotel collapsed though, and kind of ruined some of the street. We're not going to talk about that, but it's really cool seeing all the stuff that's there and very like unique, because I have like grandparents' pictures of walking down the street and it's like in the game it looks just like it. So I
think I wish it had come out in 2017. I really like it had just gotten that, because it could have been really great. Instead it's just okay.
I think people have gotten okay more with delays, especially since recent events.
It's so funny that Cyberpunk is the flashpoint. Was the flashpoint of delays will never be bad again.
That was the breaking point, I think.
Yes, but that's also the unique case that even after 4 delays, that thing was broken. So
you could argue that a lot of the reason they had to delay it was once again because of the marketing team really jumping the gun a lot of times on that and giving them a date before all that happened. I mean, even I looked back on it just to give a slight caveat. That original gameplay reveal that we found out was not gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when they were posting about it, they said, "Hey, do y'all want to see something of what it could be?" And everyone was like, "Yes, absolutely. Let's see what it could look like." And that's when they dropped that.
And do you remember when in that same thing, when they was like, release when it's ready? They literally said that, so they couldn't have face planted even more epically.
Too much too early. They revealed stuff that they weren't clear enough on it. But then I also think it was just a flashpoint of the industry being way too hyped up about things too early on in general. And I think this had to be that slap in the face of the cold salmon, you know? You just had to get they had to get woken up out of the fever dream that everyone was trying to think this is the new exact thing that everything's going to be based off now. It's going to change the entire industry, and it's like...
Yes. And instead it became the gaming industry's Icarus moment.
You could almost also say the pandemic probably had something to do with that, too.
Oh, absolutely. But then at the same time, like the pandemic, everyone adjusted with the pandemic, and they still decided they needed to come out that year, especially now with the next gen version now all the way until 2022. That gives an idea how early we got that game. So
yeah, I was thinking like the idea of everything else getting delayed, and that was like the one thing that's still coming out with nobody else having any, like they had no competition, nobody had anything else new to play. That was like the one big thing that was still coming out. So it's almost like everyone's expectations rode on that being able to carry themselves through the crap that they had to deal with in 2020. And that had to justify everything. Almost.
Yes. Instead, it became the proper punctuation of that year. Let me see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5. Still in the Take Two train. In the same earnings call, 2K's Marvel game, Midnight Suns, originally scheduled to be released in March 2022, and not forget, it got revealed 2 months ago, has been delayed to an undisclosed time in the second half of 2022. They cited they needed more time to get it right, but it's also clear, this is editorial note, they saw the bloodbath that was going to be that release window, and they decided to blink and move it out of there. Especially when the next gen version of GTA 5 is going to release in that same time period, which is the end of the fiscal year. I knew a game was going to blink out of that section. The first one that sort of did but didn't with Elden Ring, which actually got its gameplay reveal last week. I didn't put it in the news. That one, remember, that was January, and it got moved right straight into the bloodbath. That's funny. Now we got a game that's removing itself from the bloodbath. I'm not shocked. I absolutely am not shocked. In fact, I think this is the best thing that could have happened to this. I also find it funny that maybe if you're gonna reveal a game, make sure you don't announce a release date. If you don't mean to stick to that release date.
Look at God of War Ragnarok. Everyone was expecting and hoping for a release date, but I'm really glad they didn't, because now they can hold that for whenever that's ready enough to say that.
Yeah, to be fair, that Ragnarok has the kind of like the shame of having been announced with just a logo and a year, despite no gameplay. This is gonna get delayed written all over it. So.
That's true. As far as Midnight Suns goes, I'm going to echo the same thing as you, say that it's one, a good thing that it's getting delayed. 2, I remember exactly the concerns people were having with XCOM 2 since that came out. And that's really you could argue that, Mario Rabbids was like the next XCOM game anyway, but I'm not going to go play that.
Because of your hatred about the rabbits, right?
Well, I don't like them. They were the weird minions of that era for gaming, but also it's not like my vibe. I don't want to play an XCOM game with Mario in it. That doesn't make sense to me. But I understand and respect a lot of people that like it and all of that. But anyway, for XCOM 2, it came out and it was like a buggy mess. It still has all the problems. Even to this day, people talk about the combat and how even with the percentages and numbers that you're presented with, there's stuff that is shown behind the scenes. I don't know if you've actually delved into that.
I have it, but I've never played it. I have, because it came out on PS Plus. I've never played it.
I actually tried to cheat the system by modding it because the developer is famously recorded for saying that people, players specifically, will take the fun out of a game if you, as a developer, give them too much power to change things. So basically, with XCOM, if you have the ability, people are going to forcibly be over prepared. They're going to be overly cautious. And so everything in XCOM 2 is created to both create frustration, but also to create a sense of urgency from the macro to the micro. On the macro level, there's always more things that are in danger of happening than you can physically handle. It's meant to give you that feeling of trying to do whatever you can and move on from that. On the micro level, turn to turn, you can have a percentage of hitting things, but even if you have 100% chance, you can still miss, because there are percentages in the background saying that if you are doing too well, they will sabotage you. They will literally kneecap your progress and capability to let you feel more like you are eking out the tiniest victory. And to the point where they actually help you if you've lost several members, if you're down to like your last couple of people, they boost those percentages in the background and do all that stuff. Anyway, all that is to say, it's still a mess to me, even all these years later, that it's just they couldn't dial that in, and it still feels very frustrating, and that's the reason why I stopped playing it. And it also absolutely doesn't run at all correctly on console in the slightest. It just doesn't work. The loading screens are like literally 3-4 minutes long. All that is to say, with Midnight Suns, it can only be better if they delay this to really dial that in and become the new benchmark for this style of game.
Yeah, especially because they said that it's not going to be like XCOM. It's going to be more of a turn-based RPG.
Which is even better.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hope that. And it's weird that they started off by saying it was going to be like XCOM, and they're like...
Everyone assumed that because of the developer, Firaxis. So it's like, oh, Firaxis is doing a Marvel game, so it's going to be an XCOM Marvel game. But then they did the gameplay reveal the week after the Gamescom conference, and the week you were sheltered with the...
Okay, there we go. My computer froze for a second.
Yeah, I was like, the week that you were sheltered in place for the hurricane, Katrina 2.0 -1, remember that?
Yeah.
That's when the gameplay reveal happened. So I talked with Zach about it when he joined in to sub for you. And,
I'm looking at it right now, actually, because I completely forgot that I did not watch this gameplay demonstration. And I'll still call it XCOM and Fire Emblem style, just without the grid.
Yeah, it's definitely more Fire Emblem in a way, especially I don't know if I'm speaking out of my own butt here. Does Fire Emblem have like a card-based system?
Not really. It's usually based on the character specifically, and then they have little abilities within that. It's more like, all right, you're going to have your option of almost like Mario Party, where you have your basic attack, you have any magic that you might have, and you might have like any skills that you can use.
By the way, like I was at a friend's apartment yesterday. We were playing Mario Party, not the new one, the previous one, and I won the round by never buying a star, but just stealing them.
Funny that you say that, because I can talk about my experience with the new Mario Party Superstars whenever we record for that.
Yes. So,
and that was interesting.
Yes. So yeah, Midnight Suns, whenever it happens in 2022, we need to know more what's happening later in 2022. Literally everything that's happening in those first 3 months could be spread out, and you have a really good 2022 just based on everything just releasing in that packed.
Stacked.
Yes. While it is still screaming, just knowing what's coming.
I will say that the summer of 2022 is going to be really good for anybody that finds a sale on some of those games.
Oh, we're going to be feasting, I tell you.
Yeah.
Final story. The Nintendo Switch has officially sold 92.87 million units, moving some 3 million units since the last reported milestone of 89 million, when it officially surpassed the Xbox 360 and the PS3. And I don't know if you remember, they announced that specifically because it passed those consoles, and it's now at spitting distance of reaching the Wii and PS1 with lesser time in the market. Remember, the Switch has just been in the market for 4 years still. It's moving into a 5th one. However, Nintendo suffered a drop in its stock, with stockholders worried about the continued supply constraints happening due to the worldwide pandemic, which they cite skepticism towards Switch maintaining its insane momentum. All of this despite the Switch OLED having just released earlier in October. But we haven't heard a peep about that one. Like if it's moved considerable units or if they're just lumping all of them together. It's gonna happen. The Switch is gonna outsell the Wii. It's gonna outsell the PS1. The big question is, will it outsell PS4? Will it be able to sell so much that it reaches Nintendo DS levels or even PS2 levels? I think either way, if Nintendo has like the 3rd best selling console of all time, they'll be happy considering what just happened to them with its previous console, that it was one of the worst selling of all time.
I want to say that I'm happy for them, but then I'm also frustrated because it's Nintendo and they constantly do things that are anti-consumer to the point that I almost want them to get a rude awakening somehow.
I kind of wanted the drop in stock to also be in response to how horrible the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack was received. And
I would have liked that, but I don't think the investors really care about stuff like that.
Yeah.
As long as they get the money through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Nintendo has a system that just... I think, and this is not just Nintendo, this is just gaming in general. All 3 of them should feel really blessed at how healthy the gaming scene feels. That everyone just wants one of these machines. No machine can stay on a retail. Like, especially now that they're putting it in retail, they're not lasting. They're going quick.
I mean, even the Mario Party that just came out wasn't even at my local GameStop. I had to go a lot further to go get it. And Metroid Dread, same situation. It was not at the location that I was going to go get it at.
Yeah, what day is it? 7 days. Yeah, well, today is just the 8th. We have 7 days until we hear how much Dread sold, if it charted. I am really, really, really hoping to hear something about it. Especially with all the talk.
I both want it to succeed because I want to see more sequels and stuff, the style of it, but then I really want them to realize that there's a caveat and a little asterisk.
Let's just put it like this: like that game charted for 3 weeks in the UK and then vanished because they do like weekly sales. I will say that the fact that they sold more in those weeks than the entire Metroid series had done, I mean, it should speak good about how much better was it. Did that continue? Especially because that's like the hardcore marquee title for the Switch this year, especially for this fall. I personally my appreciation for Dread has grown considerably since we did our chat with PJ a week or 2 ago. And it just has stuck with me more. Like, I can't wait for us to do a game. Like, we're gonna record our Game of the Year's chat before we go on holiday. I just can't wait to see like where I land.
It's gonna be for mine, honestly. I need to think back on everything that I've bought this year and really.
Especially if there's gonna be a Black Friday sale coming soon, anytime. Maybe you can pick some of the old stuff that you missed, like Hitman.
I would like to. It's currently on sale for $40, but it was previously on sale for $30, and then before that it was on sale for $20. So that one's all over the place. When it goes down to 20 again, I'll get it.
Yeah, I keep saying because funny enough, I've been listening to our old episodes because I just love listening to see where we've come from, things how we can improve, or things that we have talked so we don't re-say some things. We have kept saying that there's been barely anything this year, and that's been a complete misnomer. Like, it has just been us being complete cheapskates that just don't want to buy anything. There's more than you can give it credit for. It's actually like reminding me a lot of 2019, especially now that we're like in this later period.
I think it's just because a lot of stuff got delayed out of 2021 that we were a little salty about it, because there was supposed to be a good feast going on around this time. And that had to get pushed back into, as you said, the first quarter of next year. But we definitely cannot say that for next year. Because such a wild lineup.
Yes. And I think we just have to be realistic about us not being ones that receive games. We have to buy them from our hard-earned dollars. We just really want to spend them well.
Special.
Exactly. So But yeah, and that concludes the news section for this week's episode of the X Button. For everyone that's listening the full episode, we are fully transitioning now to what have we been playing / topic.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of my glorious gourds. I don't know. Hi, I'm Paul. How's it going, everybody? And with me is my co-host, Alejandro.
How you doing, Mr. Goldilocks?
I'm doing well, Mr. Big Bad Bear. I don't know. I merged Big Bad Wolf and the Three Bears in my head. Ooh. Oh gosh, I've watched Shrek too many times. Anyway.
But by the way, remember real quick before you move on.
Yeah,
remember what I said about me doing No Shave November?
Yeah,
look at this. Only a week.
Glorious.
It's already back.
That stubble
wait
will not go away.
And you'll see in a few weeks how much bigger it gets. So.
I am looking forward to seeing how great of a beard you can grow within this month, because I don't know if I've seen you go beyond a certain point.
During quarantine last year, I did. Yeah, and that's
we also took a break from our podcast, so I didn't see you very often.
Yes, and we didn't even see each other because we were not doing video. It was just some pictures I sent.
Good point. Also true. And this has been a nice little change of pace with being able to actually talk and bounce off each other. So, Alejandro, have you been playing anything?
Briefly, some new stuff and still being chained to some old stuff. So like for the new stuff, like just recently, like just last night, I started playing Forza Horizon 5. That is like the new Xbox exclusive. Got to play it a little bit on PC, and I tell you, I'm not much of a racing guy. I have dabbled here and there. Wow, this Forza Horizon game, I tell you, there's something special about it. Not just visually, but in its feel. I feel like you have a PC, right?
I do.
And you have Game Pass. You should try to download it. And
it's on Game Pass?
Yeah, it's on Game Pass. Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of Game Pass, and Xbox still committing to day one releases, even though they did an early access period, so the whole day one thing got muddied. Like, you know how sometimes they sold the $99 version. If you want to play it now, like 4 days early, buy this version. But if you want to be the measly $60/$70 peasant, you're gonna have your day one like 5 days later. They did this thing where if you had Game Pass Ultimate, they gave you a $45 quote unquote upgrade for you to get that $99 version, so you can start playing it earlier, despite the fact it's still being on Game Pass. It's this whole weird thing. It's like Microsoft is the only one that, kind of like Ubisoft and other ones, they love doing the early access thing. I actually did that for Gears of War 4 back in 2016. Because I was like, a friend convinced me, he's like, let's start playing it now. And god damn it.
Well, my question to you then is, what is the point of buying these different versions of it if you can just get it on Game Pass for free?
So in this one was just for you to basically get a cheaper version of the $99.99 version. That's what it is, even though you're still subscribed to Game Pass.
Got it.
And what's scummy is that even though you pay those $45, if you stop paying for Game Pass, you won't have access to the game, which is weird. It's a whole can of worms. So basically, you're just paying $45 to start playing 5 days earlier, which is, it can be, it's not worth it. I mean, especially if the whole point of playing on Game Pass is that it's free, quote unquote.
Unless you know it's going to go away one day, or you're not going to have Game Pass.
So and that's the thing. Like with Microsoft first party, there is no. They usually older games are always there. Here's the only exception though. Forza games are the only ones that they have been rotating out because of licenses.
Really?
Because every time you do a car game, every car you put in, you need to they need to renew the licensing because they always have a newer version of the game. That's why they always keep the listing older versions, because you got a new one. And
so
logically,
the newest will always be there, but they'll delist the. Okay, well that's more acceptable. And I know that's why Need for Speed is always going to live in the shadow of Forza now, because they took away a lot of the licenses because they don't want their cars running from cops.
And Need for Speed is crap these days. It's no longer the tour de force for the arcade car racer it used to be.
Even Heat apparently.
I tell you, like in Forza Horizon 5, like the arcadey car physics are so finely tuned. Wait until you do like a race in off-road, like in off-road, just rocky terrain.
Honestly, if I remember to later today, I'm gonna try to get that downloaded on my PC, plug up my little game controller, and
yeah, especially with the Xbox controller, it's so easy to plug in.
Yes.
And I tell you, like, it's also available on Xbox One, but I can't imagine it doing it justice these days. I mean, we have been playing Halo
out on base,
and
no.
even on base Xbox, like especially playing through Halo 3 as we have been playing, which we returned a little bit, and I should be posting part 2 soon, and we should be playing for part 3 so we can be done with it. It's like, yeah, it's like the base Xbox One is like now being 80 years old. It's finally at the point where it's like it's not worth it. So yeah, so I would say, like, just in the brief time that I played with Forza Horizon 5, maybe it's because I haven't played a racing game in such a long time. That's
why
I
could also play a factor.
Yes, but also look at the reviews of this thing. This thing has been reviewing insane. Even though Forza is always Xbox's most high-reviewed series since this past generation. They're the ones that critically have been carrying the baton, basically. And another thing, first time experience that I played just briefly because I just got a little bit of time to kind of sneak in, Call of Duty Vanguard, which, by the way, I didn't buy. My brother bought, and he bought the PC version. So it was weird that my first experience with a new Call of Duty game is through the PC, even though I played I played the open beta. I played the first mission on... Yeah, it was just the first mission of Call of Duty Vanguard, and this is Call of Duty. Oh, it's another one. And yeah, this one just, it's beautiful. Like there's something about these Sledgehammer Call of Duties that, from detail, like all the way from Advanced Warfare and even World War II, which I recently replayed, they had this high amount level of detail and care that it's what strikes you. But gameplay wise, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna be too judgmental because I've only played the first one, but this feels very by the numbers, and I don't know if that's just symptom of it being the first mission. Maybe it changes a little bit, because I have to give credit where credit's due. World War II also starts very by the numbers, especially that it's especially World War II throws into D-Day, and how many games have we gone through the invasion of Normandy in D-Day. And in that one was
defense. I could play through a first mission being D-Day like over and over again. I love that situation. But
yeah, but it's like that's the thing. It's a safe kind of beginning.
It is. Yeah.
The beginning of this one is not quite that bad. Yeah, I heard it's not that long also, so maybe by the time we record next week, we'll have blast through it. But the thing is that I only played the first mission because then the app crashed, and I can't open the game right now. There's like it's like grayed out where it says play, and I'm like, why? The thing's installed. Like, what the heck? So this is a reason why I'm not a PC gamer. That is precisely the kind of shit that I can't stand, because sometimes things can just go wrong and you don't know why, and then maybe it requires having
you to fix it.
Yeah, it's on you, exactly. And that's why, yes, I understand that in PC, if you have a super beefed up PC, if you get a 3090 GTX, it's going to be it's going to give you performance far beyond what this current crop of consoles can even give you.
Right.
I personally don't give a shit. I just want the convenience and this
price.
yes, exactly. And the price, it's always going to be cheaper than a big ass PC. Glad for those people that can really invest, like our friend PJ. He recently invested on a 3080, I think he did. And that's a lot of money to invest, because not only that, because you have to also buy a PC and fan and all that to kind of withstand the graphics card. And I can see, if you're really invested there, why would you even dare go to console?
Right.
That will never be me, because that's always going to be a sunken cost. And I feel bad for my brother that he's so up the PC's ass now, because he plays Warzone competitively, that he's been saving, like he's been playing tournaments, and he's been using the PC we used to I used to edit. He is the one that plays there, enough so that he felt fine selling his own PS4 to invest on an own PC for him. So if he wants to know what a sunken cost is going to be, like how often new graphics cards happen, And kind of that pressure, if you really are playing competitively, and all the people that invest all this money, because they always have to be in the high end, it's gonna be very expensive for him. Me, I am an old ass gamer. I have white temples. I'm from the N64 SNES era. That's where I grew up with. I don't need that. So I would have played more Vanguard if that hadn't happened. So
I have two questions for you just for Vanguard. One is, how would you say they have tackled the alternate history side, or is it almost non-existent?
Can't really say with that first mission. I'll tell you more when I really go through it. So okay. I don't want to do like a misinformed. It feels it does feel like a more fictitious take on World War II in a way, like a more produced thing instead of like a more historical recollection, kind of like World War II, which was their previous game. But yeah, I don't want to definitely say much in worry that I'm gonna speak out of turn. But
just think about the opening mission to Wolfenstein New Order, and like the way they get you into the understanding of this is alternate history. Of you see the planes and you immediately know you are watching them flying towards this big fortress, and it says 1946, and you're like, oh,
and then you see robots, and then you see robots
like immediately into it, and you're just like, okay, so this is like big alternate history, but I wasn't here for it.
Wolfenstein New Order is one of my favorite first-person shooter campaigns of all time, and especially it's a shooter that just kept getting better, because also one thing about that first mission, it's not very good. It's not that fun compared to what comes after you flash forward in that game.
Crazy stuff going on.
Yeah. And to me, I will always be shocked that a Wolfenstein game, especially that first one, has so much pathos, has so much great writing that you wouldn't expect that from freaking Wolfenstein, the ultimate, I am a Nazi murder machine, let's just kill everything. I mean, the guy's called BJ Blazkowicz, and in that game,
they got into the New Colossus, I think.
Oh yeah, even more.
Definitely stepped over the line, but New Order, like, just it had that back and forth of like, am I watching a really deep character drama, or am I watching a Fast and Furious movie? And I'm not really sure which.
Yeah, the New Colossus is the one that really goes for it. Yeah. Like, you beat that one, right? That middle section from when you go home onwards, man, that is like, it's such a roller coaster. You're like, wow, it's an escalation.
I could talk about that game, but
yeah, I just hate that it's so hard. The New Colossus it's too on. Like, it was a massive step back in gameplay compared to the first one. The first one felt more fair and finely tuned. So but that's not the only thing that I have. That was my first time experiences playing something like just for this episode. I have also been playing some old games that have been completely dominating my time. I mentioned one of those last week.
Talk to us about the game that you were working on.
Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. I finished Metroid Prime 2 Echoes last Sunday, and this is one of those experiences that, in equal fashion, I've never had a game that I've loved and abhorred in equal, like at the same time. It is that kind of sequel. It's definitely a sequel of one step forward, two steps back from its original, because I mentioned I beat the original Metroid Prime, and despite its age and me playing the GameCube version 19 years later, that game still holds up. There was barely anything in that original game that made me want to tear my hair out or think this is bullshit, this isn't fair. The final boss was a little hard, but it was fun to really beat, especially now knowing, since we played Dread, that a final super hard boss, maybe it's a little bit of a template in some Metroid games, not all of them, because in Zero Mission and Fusion I didn't find the final boss that particular hard, and hopefully one time you get to play that with your emulator.
And I'm still working through it. I've gotten further. Yeah, so
Metroid Prime 2, like, the two specific boss fights, the spider boss, it is called the Spider Guardian and the Boost Ball Guardian, they require a level of precision, especially when you're in Morph Ball, that I feel is way too loose and out of control for it to feel fun or satisfying. And what kills me is that I know there is a version of that game where Retro Studios heard the feedback and they're like, we're gonna tune this. That happened in the pre-patch era, and that's exclusive in a version of a game that online is being sold for more than $100, almost $300 in specific cases. I'm talking about the Wii version of Metroid Prime 2, and I'm sad of seeing that that's a game that where I'm seeing how well the design of it, of its world and exploration was improved from the first game, but its pain points and difficulty makes me love it considerably less. I will be shocked if this isn't my least favorite of the Metroid Prime series by the end, like when I go through all of them, because I immediately then jumped into Metroid Prime 3, which I played before. Like, I played that way back in 2007. Never beat it because, again, I mentioned I was young and stupid, and I didn't really understand the game's language back then, or how to properly always use maps, despite the maps clearly telling you, here is a question mark, go there. And also the problem with also being... Here's a problem with Metroid games. They have to be all you play. You can't take a break. You're gonna get lost. I did that because I was playing other stuff back then. Then when I went back, I was like, what was I doing? What were the mechanics? How am I supposed to get there? And then I got lost and lost interest. I'm not gonna do that this time. I'm gonna, just like I felt I was in this abusive relationship with Metroid Prime 2, where I just couldn't stop playing despite me at 1 a.m. just texting you all, this game. Like literally all the time, you guys would always be waking up that, or every time that I would go to bed, I would always have those bullshit
like
moments.
2, 3 in the morning. I'd finally wake up normally, and I'd scroll through and I'd see like 24 missed messages, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so he's having like an experience here.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I tell you, like, I wouldn't recommend you play that game unless you have the fortitude of frustration, and
Say no more.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to. And I'm 3, but here's the thing, Metroid Prime 3 is so interesting because it's probably now, especially because I've gotten more experience with a similar series aesthetically with Halo, how much they took from Halo for Metroid Prime 3 with its emphasis on being in a galactic federation. You fighting sometimes with some soldiers.
You were describing it to me and it sounded awesome because you were like going on this attack with like the other Federation soldiers, and you were talking about like the bounty hunting side of things.
Yes, because there's like you have a bounty hunter group there that you chat with, and what's sad is that they become corrupted and you have to kill them. Which really sucks. Like, but because in that first mission you see how great. There's one that's basically Frozone from The Incredibles. His power is ice, and he's like sliding. And there's like a shapeshifter, and there's like a robot dude that gets into like a massive tank, like if he's the Iron Giant. And the shapeshifter one calls you Sammy. It's just so funny, even though Samus is still a mute. Everyone talks to her, and she's like staring, like just nodding and all that. That's always so funny.
Is this the first time we've seen other bounty hunters in the Metroid series?
I would say yes, because I haven't.
I'm thinking about it, and like all of this journey through with Samus being like the only one, but she's like listed as a bounty hunter. I'm like, in this world, what do other bounty hunters look like with like these almost magical levels of sci-fi tech? And that's really cool that they like really lean into that side of, all right, well, in this world, like other people have other powers as well that they've incorporated into their way of doing things. So that's really awesome that they did that.
Yeah, and not only that, like the Wii controls of that game are magnificent, especially coming from the one stick that you move and turn. In the other one, the only way to strafe was you holding the lock-on button, like if it was Zelda, because that's how they controlled in Metroid Prime 1 and 2. Worked well enough with the first one. I felt that control scheme got broken with the second one, with the kind of precision and difficulty was asking from you. With this one, just the ability to finally strafe normally with your left stick and aiming with the Wiimote, and how precise the Wiimote is.
It's kind of cool now that I think about it.
It really is, and it also makes me try to peek at the alternate history of pointer controls having become the standard for first-person shooters, like going forward. And I feel that didn't happen because Nintendo decided to do that in a way weaker hardware compared to the Xbox 360 and PS3. Imagine if the Wii had been just as powerful, relatively speaking, like the PS3 and 360 graphically, instead of being like a generation behind.
I mean, they would have not only sold the most, but not just grandmothers and mothers would have bought it, and like really, I would say competitive people would have played it more, because PlayStation tried with their little game gun thing, and Kinect was just an absolute dumpster fire.
Exactly. The PS3 and Xbox 360 kind of fell in backwards with that. And it's kind of sad because the level of precision that I'm getting with Metroid Prime 3 now is like, it's so pinpoint accurate. It's so immersive that I was like, yeah, this is one of the few ones that I'm like, yeah, this adds to the experience. This doesn't feel too tacked on. It's not like how I felt with Skyward Sword, that it tried to be more immersive, but its constant disconnections always took you out of the experience. And this one, it didn't need to do that. And that's what makes this experience that I'm really enjoying Metroid Prime 3 even more now. Now being in it now, it makes it more bittersweet knowing that maybe there's no way modern audiences can experience this because of how intrinsically tied that was to the Wii remote. And obviously there's the Switch that has motion control. In fact, I would even argue it has more precise because there's no need for the bar in the Wii.
True.
But you know how I sometimes feel like Nintendo is very lazy sometimes, especially when it comes to, you just look at the work they did with Skyward Sword HD. That felt as minimal viable product as possible. Let's beef up the resolution, which automatically make that game look prettier, but it's still just, it wasn't like a full-on remake like what we've been seeing with other things. And the half step they took to do the controls for people that didn't want to do motion controls and for it to work on the Switch Lite, I can't see, like for example, they did Metroid Prime Trilogy and Wii. They added motion control aiming to Prime 1 and 2, and that was easy to do. But 3 was made with the precision in mind. Yeah. And it's not one that is like, okay, we can do that backwards. We can try to make it feel like Metroid Prime 1 and 2. The pacing of the combat, how many enemies are thrown at you, how quickly the pace is as you go through tighter rooms. It doesn't feel like just going back to Metroid Prime 1 and 2 controls could work. So that's why I'm like, I made peace with the fact that maybe people are never going to play this game ever again. They're probably, and that's sad to me because there's a really great game here. I don't know if it's going to be my favorite of this trilogy because the original one does feel the most closer to what Metroid is. The being alone in an alien world, eeriness, like it's a enchanting and atmosphere, creepiness. I'm not feeling that with 3 because a lot of people are talking to you. There's voice acting in the game. There's more combat to it, even though the combat's fun. But I would say after 2 was probably a misstep for them, even though a lot of people, do you know how there's the masochists that say, no, this is my favorite because of how freaking hard it was and how good it felt. I'm not the one that is like, this is good just because it's so hard and I beat it. I'm like, yeah, this sometimes is not as fun. This one is. And I can't wait to finally beat it and say that I finally beat all the Metroid series with the exception of Metroid 2. Paul, what have you been playing?
First and foremost, my first time experiences were Mario Party Superstars and First Class Trouble. I'm going to briefly talk on First Class Trouble first, which is the PlayStation Plus game that was given out this month.
Oh, okay.
It's the one that we saw on the State of Play where it's like you're like 1960s style, but you're in a space station and it's more or less Among Us with added steps. Where some of you are robots pretending to be people, some of you are actually people, and you got to figure out which one of you is the robot killing everyone else. I had a stunted progress with this because the game is completely broken, and we never actually got into a match.
Ooh, and it's free, right?
It's free. They are aware of the problem. There's something to do with the matchmaking / the servers, and it is not letting people go into it. But some can, and it just literally takes them about 10 minutes of waiting to actually get in. So me and like three or four of my friends all gathered together, and I will say it's kind of neat to sit on the main dashboard, and it's like a bar lounge area, and any characters that join in with you in your lobby are just like chilling out, chatting with each other, drinking martinis at the bar or whatever, and then you see like robots kind of floating in space in the background, a la Rick and Morty. It's a cool vibe to it, and I wish I could have played it, but outside of seeing like I enjoy the aesthetic and it looks polished enough in that vibe, there's a lot of cosmetic buying options, which has me like, man, they're really thinking that this is gonna be the game for some people. But I don't see it lasting very long unless they very quickly fix this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So on to the actual positive experience I had, Mario Party Superstars. So I haven't played a Mario Party game since I think 10.
Wait, you didn't play the Wii one, Super Mario Party?
I don't think I don't know.
Oh, really?
I played like 2 and 3 back forever ago. I think I played like 6 for the GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
I played like 9 for the Wii
The Wii.
U.
No,
Or
9 was the Wii.
Okay.
The Wii U one was 10.
Didn't they port that to the Switch?
No, the one that's on the Switch is Super Mario Party.
Okay, then I did play Super Mario Party because I played somebody's Switch version.
Then you play Super Mario Party.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I had to play that once then. That was interesting because that was like sort of 3D at times, and you had to like get the grid just right to land on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little too much for me. They added a lot of bells and whistles, and then I realized what I was really looking for was, just like a lot of other people apparently, was original style maps that I like vaguely remembered because I played a couple of these.
Basically remake.
Yeah, but then like mini games, not just of specific ones, but like pretty much all of them. It's like got like not decades, that's years, dozens and dozens of these. From like stuff that I did actually remember, like you're standing on the ball and you're on top of a mountain, you have to hit each other off the ball and all that stuff. It was classic Mario Party.
And the thing with Superstars is that this is a better version of a Nintendo attempt from years back where they did a 3DS version named this that was just the mini games. This is them doing that, but adding also boards, so it's a more complete actual Mario Party game.
And I realized that in the past, I really wanted that mode where you could just only play the mini games because that seemed like the most fun part of it. But then when you take away the actual board part of it, you realize that you're not actually getting the whole thing. It's like you're skipping straight to the dessert and then you're getting sick of it.
Yes. And with the board is where a lot of the Mario Party bullshit happens.
Oh, yeah. Like that's what you come here for, which is where I was going to get into at some point. We played with my wife, 2 of her friends who are married, and their 7-year-old daughter.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so technically there were 5 of us, but only 4 of us, of course, had controllers, and we had each half of a Switch controller to split it between all of us. And the funny thing is like we gave the 7-year-old a handicap of 1 star at the start of the game. And she managed to circumvent the entire map about 5 times. And because the Star and Bowser locations flip-flopped to the same place every time, you could almost like line it up just right. And so we started up and she goes the wrong way and we're like, oh wow, this kid is gonna ruin it for us. And we didn't realize after a certain amount of turns it automatically switches, or if you land on the event square. So one of us of course lands on it. It was me, and she gets the 2nd star. And then she comes back around, she goes the wrong way again, and she times it out just in time to land right in front of the star as it switches over. And so we are like battling with the 7-year-old for domination of the game. And of course the mini games were hilarious because they you can choose like basic, all right, all the mini games, or you want skill based, you want luck based, you want certain things, or family oriented, where it's like I guess the easier ones, which is awesome because when you're a child you're like, good lord, I can't just mash this button as fast as everyone else can. This is garbage.
Oh yeah.
So they still had a few of them in there that it was like, oh, I'm absolutely going to clown on everybody in this. But there were a few that it was like, oh shoot, I don't know if I'm actually going to get this. And I lost a couple of them because of one thing or another, because I got too overconfident or something. And honestly, it was just a huge fun time. And I want to go play it again and invite friends over and stuff. And it's like a return to form for Mario Party. I'm really glad that they did this.
I would say Super Mario Party got there because they updated it for free and added so much stuff. And I learned that when I saw one of the streams from our friend PJ, that he did like high stakes Mario Party streams, and they were really funny.
I remember that now.
So that's when I learned, it's like, oh, they added more, because Super Mario Party was very bare bones when it launched on Switch. And I was surprised that they didn't keep adding, but that's the Nintendo MO. They don't do service games, so they want you to keep buying new versions of games. So I actually went to a friend's apartment. He recently moved to an apartment here, and we played Super Mario Party there. It felt fun being the one that won without ever buying a star. I just kept stealing.
That's the other fun part, because I realized with how hard it is to get across the map at a certain point, you're better off just stealing a star from somebody else who's got one. Justifiably. The dog is mad that both of us steal stars to win Mario Party.
that was perfect.
Because I absolutely did that, and I came in second, fortunately, by just barely. The husband managed to beat me out right at the end.
Yes.
But the last thing I wanted to mention is that this also has online capabilities, which
does it work? Because in the other one seemed to work, because that's how our friend PJ did that. And just keep explaining. I'm gonna shove my dog out.
I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So as far as I understand for Mario Party Superstars, online you can actually matchmake and play with your friends against other people. So the fact that you can possibly go through this whole thing playing with complete strangers, not really able to do any voice chat, but like you can pull up these emojis, Mario style emojis that you can pull up, like reactions to things happening, and so that we were like spamming different things, and they're customized for each character you pick as well for the most part, and it was just really funny messing with each other. And then of course you pull it up and the menu blocks off some of the map, so people were like, get the map, or get your emojis away, I'm trying to look at the map, and they're like, ah! So it was just, we all turned into children as soon as we were playing.
That game always, like that and Smash, will always make you feel like children. I also played Smash finally again after having played it for a while in that friend's apartment, because those are the only games that if you're by yourself, they're not fun, but if you play with them, they're fun. And I love being Kirby. I love doing the rock 4B. Like everyone's like all gathered here, and I just fly and just drop on them.
Yeah, everyone thinks they can counter it, but you can't counter the downbeat Kirby. And I've been destroyed by that so many times. I want to get together with some friends and play that again, because it plays different whenever you're with a bunch of buddies.
Absolutely. Like everything that you may hate about them completely goes out the window with how much fun you have collectively together. You've been playing on some older stuff, right, Paul?
Yes, jumping into the stuff I revisited. Of course, we've been playing through Halo 3,
which, by the way,
a lot.
Today, happy 17th anniversary, Halo 2.
Wow. 17
years. Since Halo 2.
And then like 20 years for Halo 1, you said, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's just...
Next Monday. Next Monday is the 20th anniversary of Halo 1. And so sad that Infinite is going to miss that date, but still released in the same year.
Which, it's nice that at least it matches the year. I'll give them that much. I'll briefly touch on a couple other things, and then I'll go into detail with a few. So, of course, playing a little more Insurgency Sandstorm, a game that works amazing with friends. I've gotten like my entire friend group that I usually play with on this. So there's all 5 of us plus 3 other people randoms, and because it's VoIP chat, where of course it's proximity, you can hear the other people in your party even though we were in a party, and usually that like cuts it off, but we could just hear them chatting back and forth doing stupid stuff, and we were having a rip-roaring time about it. I also started replaying Kingdom Hearts 1. I didn't play too much of it, but I went through the intro, skipped a few of the cutscenes because I'm like, get this out of here. Yeah, I'm on Destiny Islands right now. I very quickly was like, oh no, I need to sit down and be really ready for this, because I was trying to play it while I was doing something else, and I was like, no, this is just not going to be a fun experience if I try to like change. If I try to only play it halfway thinking about it, I'm not going to have any fun, and it's going to ruin Kingdom Hearts for me. I just want to get to Traverse Town because like the song was stuck in my head a while ago. Yeah. No, that is what happens when you graduate.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of similar.
Yeah, basically, you might as well. They're like, good job, you got out of Destiny Island. Congratulations. Here's Donald and Goofy. Get out of here.
Yes.
Yeah, so I want to play through Traverse Town because that was such an experience and environment that gave me like a mix of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and very much a calming atmosphere, which I don't know how I could have both of those at the same time because I felt like I was lost all the time because I was trying to find Donald and Goofy and I would see them show up in the previous place, so I would leave that area and go back to try to find him, and I couldn't find him. I didn't understand how
the
games
exploration
work.
aspect of Kingdom Hearts 1 early on is so bad. Like,
It is,
yeah,
but,
it is so bad. Like sometimes with some weird jumps you need to do in some places to reach where you need to go that it's like doesn't make any sense.
Like you got to get to a certain area to trigger this cutscene before you can go to the next area, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I almost feel like some of it was intentional for Traverse Town because that's the whole idea. Is like
you're traversing.
Lost, you're trying to find your way through the city and figure out what the heck is going on. So I'm like, all right, I'll vibe with it. I am glad that in the future they added the quality of life where you could upgrade things like your Kingdom Key, because I still think that's one of the coolest keys out there. And I hate walking around with that stupid freaking Peter Pan key. But it was like the strongest one at the time. So
now, quick question. At what point in Kingdom Hearts do you really love that game? Like from the first, one?
We talked about it briefly. So Traverse Town was where I got interested.
Mm-hmm.
I was frustrated as hell in Destiny Islands, obviously, and I was like, oh my gosh, Riku just got freaking eaten by darkness, Kairi disappeared, I don't know what's going on. So like when the plot kicked in, I was like, heck yeah. And I felt really bad for Sora's mom because she's like, Sora, dinner's ready, and he's just gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking like, dude, did his parents just think he's dead? Like, what happened? But yeah, so Traverse Town was really where things kicked off because you bumped into Leon, Yuffie, Aerith, and all that. And even though I had never played those games, I recognized them. And
I didn't when I played. I was like, oh my
Really?
god, that didn't register for me when I first played in 2017 this game.
Yeah.
And to me, like the Alice in Wonderland world, which I think is the first one, if I remember, that's the first one right out of Traverse Town.
Absolute trash.
Yeah, absolute trash. The Tarzan one, slightly better. But still not great.
What happened after Tarzan?
I think it's Aladdin.
Olympus. Oh.
No, Olympus is there, but
It is
Olympus is the it's just the arena. I think it's Olympus and Aladdin. I
think
really
Olympus
like.
Is where I got really into it. Honestly.
Yeah, I really like Aladdin one because I really like that movie. The Little Mermaid one, I know people hate because it's a swimming level.
Hate it.
I didn't hate it quite, but the Halloween Town from the first game, it's so good. I like the Peter Pan one, even though it's just an in Hook's ship, but I really like the flying afterwards. But I feel that game really goes from this is fun to really epic as Hollow Bastion.
Yeah.
Hollow Bastion, especially when you lose Goofy and Donald because they betray you.
Dude, they straight up are like, oh, you don't have the key anymore.
Yeah, bye. Yeah. But I feel it's because it's the music of Hollow Bastion that sticks with you. It was funny putting that Hollow Bastion music in the Hollow Bastion map from Smash. It's so cool that you can put it there.
I was always surprised, just to briefly get off my own topic, was for Kingdom Hearts 2, the first time I played through it, I didn't finish some of the optional worlds. So I never got Radiant Garden to come back, more or less. I didn't finish the Tron world. And when I went back finished
you
it,
need to finish Tron World to beat the game.
No, there is something else that you have to go back into later on that you fight I don't remember which one you fight. You fight the dude that gets really big, and then I think that's where you finish it. But you can go back and fight the big red screen guy, and I don't know if that was required. I think that was optional.
I would have to replay it. Maybe we can book club.
But there was a point that I didn't really finish it, quote unquote. But there was something else I could have done that I didn't. But yeah, I definitely Radiant Garden. I didn't finish that at all. It was still stayed as Hollow Bastion on my screen the first few times I played through Kingdom Hearts 2, and it wasn't until I went back and was just like, I'm just gonna keep playing. I think it was actually when I had the 2.5 version that I really wanted to 100% this game as much as I would
have loved to have played the Kingdom Hearts 2 version that you didn't have to fight Roxas. because that fight is
Wait, did you play the
2.5
you played the final
the
mix
final
version?
mix. You fight Roxas in
that's
2.5
right. Yeah,
final
yeah,
mix.
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't play with him.
I keep forgetting that was the first time you played that series.
Yeah, you don't fight him on just the normal
Right.
version of 2.
It's a cutscene.
Yeah.
And that's what I went through, and I used to wish that I could fight Roxas because the cutscene was so cool. And I was like, man, would it be awesome to be able to fight this dude? And then they put him in the final mix, or I found out about final mix, and you had to buy like a Japanese PS2, and you had to like do this crazy stuff. And I actually considered it at one point, buying that version to be able to play through all the crazy nonsense you can do in the final mix, because I was like, I wish I could do all this awesome stuff. And sure enough, they let me fight Roxas, and I went, oh no, this is really hard.
No, like everyone says, because the big criticism of PS2 Kingdom Hearts 2 was that it was too easy, like very easy. And it seems that Nomura was like, oh, it was easy, huh? And then he made it really hard. Yeah, I'll teach you something with 2.5 remix. So yeah. And now, because that's the more traditional way to play that game now, because you can't buy unless you go through the black market or the super obscure corners of the internet to get that original PS2 version. Now the 2.5 one that's base Kingdom Hearts 2 now, and because of all the other
realize how special my Kingdom Hearts 2 copy is, because I have it on PS2. I have the original Kingdom Hearts 1 version as well. I remember drawing the covers from Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and like going through the instruction booklet.
They're so
evocative. Draw all the stuff.
I love the art. I freaking love that art from
fantastic. So anyway, I played through that. I'm going to touch briefly on a couple other things. Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, went back to it. I'm enjoying it a lot more.
Did you put it the right? Did you put the right graphic settings this time?
Yes, and it plays way better. Oh my gosh! Like, I'm so glad that you mentioned that one of those versions just doesn't work right, because that happened to be the one I picked.
The graphic settings, it's less. It's more graphics, but less frame rate. And you prefer more frame rate in that kind of game,
right? And well, they didn't explain well enough that your frame rate is really gonna tank with this. It was just like, oh, we're just gonna prioritize the little ray tracing to give you a good experience with your frame rate, and it'll be great. And I'm like, cool, let's try that out. And it was horrible. Never do that. Always do performance. Forget ray tracing. I've given it up on it. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot more playing through that. Of course, V is frustrating to deal with, and it's kind of funny thinking back on how cringy everything kind of is. And just to briefly touch on how poorly they treat a lot of their female characters in that game and the series in general, because I was like so excited for more of what we get that I wasn't really thinking about it the first few times. But my goodness, the fact that like they've hyped up and shown like how awesome the woman characters from Trish, Lady, and Kyrie doesn't really do anything, but she's more there as the heart anyway. She literally doesn't even show up in the game. You hear her voice like once, and then Lady and Trish are like, yeah, we're off doing demon hunting things, and then they like off screen get captured, turned into demons, and then you save them and they're just naked, and then they don't do anything for the entire rest of the story. And I was like, that's
remember that scene there. Where who's the character that Dante like jumps with like a naked body with?
That's Trish.
Trish, right? Yeah. And I remember that controversy that in the Xbox One version they didn't lens flare everything. And you can see her, and then in the PlayStation version they lens flare to kind of censor it.
I honestly didn't mind it, because I mean, we've talked about my sensibilities of like, you know what, I don't want TNA just right out there in front of me all the time. So if you want to throw a little lens flare in, then I'm fine with it. But I feel like it shouldn't have even been a thing in the first place. Not to mention, if you make the argument, Dante still had all his clothes when they found him, and for whatever reason they had to rip off all the women's clothes. So that's a whole thing in itself. And I've liked the mechanic character a lot more this time. I don't know why. Like I used her alternate skin where she doesn't have glasses and she looks better to me, because she used to have such a janky face, and I like the comedy a little bit more here and there. But it's also like, man, this is so juvenile, but it's comfort food for me. Last but not least, I briefly touched on For Honor. I went back to that. It's really fun still. I love that there's enough people still playing all of the modes that really matter.
It's still very vibrant.
Funny enough, you cannot trade it into GameStop because they will not give you any money for it. They literally said like, no, we have no value for this. But I'm like, there's literally like thousands of people playing this game constantly, and they're like, this is like, we don't value this.
Didn't they put up another boxed version of that game? Maybe that's why.
Well, they have several expansions now, so I would think there's got to be a version that lets you buy all of those. But I think most of their stuff is probably digital by now, especially if none of these secondhand gaming companies are even getting them back as trade credit. Which, another thing, gaming related, I probably should have mentioned it in news segment, but I found out that GameStop is trying to do a trade hold on all items brought into them now.
What do you mean trade hold?
So whenever something comes in, usually you can immediately turn around, stick a sticker on it, and sell it back. They now have a 30-day delay where everything that gets traded in has to go to their warehouse first and then come back and get redistributed to be bought. I found out that currently is only really applying to certain locations, and the one that I used to go to is one of those because a police officer found out that, I don't know what it was, somebody complained to a police officer about something getting traded in that wasn't supposed to get traded in. Like, people will sometimes steal things from Best Buy and Target and then trade it in to get money. And some guy found out about that had enough power to change that law in the parish. So like the entire region that I live in is getting changed so that you can't trade something in and somebody else can't walk in 5 minutes and buy that thing. Like, it has to go to their location and then come back. So it's like more stuff hitting GameStop. They're taking L's again.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They're taking them in a very quiet way compared to last year.
Apparently very recent, and also quieter because nobody knows about it, and I don't think it's really affecting them quite yet.
And you know why? And you also know why? Because it's become clear that digital has overtaken now, so people don't care.
It's getting up there. I'm still glad I have my physical version because I have so many of these disc games that I love putting back in. I mean, my Resident Evil 2, my Kingdom Hearts.
If I had some discs from PS4, I would have gone for the PS5 disc version, because I never did, and the few I did, I traded out to just get digital versions that were $2 to $3. I was like, yeah, you know what? It's like, I don't need that. So.
True.
There's this one game that you haven't mentioned there.
I'm getting there. I had one other thing on For Honor to mention, was that they had an entire crossover event with Dead by Daylight, and I got to play it. So it's really funny because it plays out like, I think they call it Dominion, which is their little capture areas or whatever mode, but it's merged with a map that was turned into like a Dead by Daylight area, and instead of zones, it's generators that you have to turn on and hold on to, and periodically the trapper, the guy that is like the villain, shows up as an AI who's like super powerful and hunts you down, and like you can't block his attacks. And he's just like a big dude, Jason Voorhees with a machete, and comes through and just starts carving through you and your enemy at the same time. And so both of you are fighting each other, and you have to fight him as well. And there's an entire like pseudo battle pass style thing where you unlock things for free just by playing that mode. So I was like, that's kind of cool that they actually went through all the effort to do that. And For Honor just kills it with their events. From like the Assassin's Creed, the Star
Prince
Wars,
of Persia one, I remember.
The Prince of Persia one. They did a couple other, but that's like at least 4 that I can think of off the top of my head. And they put effort into it. Like they put whole skins and change armors. All of the little AI characters that throw themselves at each other in the middle of the fights have completely different skins, Halloween themed. It's awesome. So the last thing I want to mention is Uncharted 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been playing through that with my wife from the beginning. I am really finding it interesting how different it is going back to it from this time, because I played through Uncharted 4 like 3 times and Lost Legacy once in the time that it spent me to go back to the series. And I told you about it, that I'm surprised that it both looks so great still, and that it is very much cartoony. Like it's stylized a lot more than I realized at the time. Like there's an entire concept of anticipation and movement in their motions, and even though it's motion captured, like there's a very specific effort to not make it lifelike, which I respect immensely, because you can't do that easily. Lifelikeness, and if you try to, it just falls apart and doesn't look great. So I think that's why Uncharted as a series still looks so good, is because it's not supposed to be lifelike.
Yeah, I'm still so angry you didn't go through the first one again, especially if you have your
kind of
wife.
Holding to it. I did not like Uncharted 1, and I don't think anything that you gain from it is really worth it. Like I don't remember anything from Uncharted 1 outside of the submarine, fighting the zombies briefly, which took way too much bullets, and the guy that gets absorbed into the El Dorado coffin or whatever, and that was like all I remember.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like you gain a lot from it. It's like 3 works because of 1. You have more relationship with Sully in 1 than you do in 2. And that's what makes you
true, because he kind of disappears out of the story very
quickly. In 2 he's like very brief, like he's there for like 2 missions, then he's out.
Yeah.
Until the very, very end of 2. Right. And then on 1, there's so much of 4 that mirrors 1. That is like a full circle thing. And especially because you have your wife you're having her start in the middle of the story with like no context of when did Drake and Elena have their first adversarial relationship that then they rekindle and then they kind of fell apart and rejoin in 2. So it's like there's so much that, especially like whenever you get to 4, which 4 is the best story, that one resonates more if you had started at the beginning and see the pictures of 1 there.
But there's only one picture that you just kind of assume from the eyes of obviously anybody. Spoilers for Uncharted 4, just warning yourself now, click away. The idea behind it is that you're seeing from the eyes of a girl who's never experienced any of that, so she's seeing it all for the first time. You could almost argue that seeing that as first time as an audience member yourself also adds to the, oh my goodness, what kind of adventures did this guy go on? Because it doesn't just touch on the game's events, but she sees things of stuff that like didn't happen in the games, but she's just understanding the gist of, oh my gosh, these guys like did some crazy nonsense back in the day. And then me personally starting with 2 myself, because I think I told the story that my youth pastor had Uncharted 2 and 3.
That's why I sold you on a PS3 back then.
Right. But he didn't have Uncharted 1 in that group. And so I just put in the first one that was there, and I got everything out of it that I was like, okay, we're right in the middle of everything. Elena, like clearly, like as soon as you meet her, she treats you like she's the ex-girlfriend. But then throughout the plot of 2, you realize she's more important than whatever Chloe is. And I don't know, it felt like a nice circle to me.
Yeah, the first one also has the whole Sir Francis Drake thing. Because then if you're just there, you're just gonna get halfway to the point of why is Sir Francis Drake so important about him being an heir. And then in the first game, he's like all about when he's pretending to be Sir Francis Drake and finding Sir Francis Drake's body and realizing that there was no greatness that he found. He just found death. You start getting that tiny kernel that then he doesn't really focus until again in 3, and then 4 further develops it in 3 ways. So you're still starting in the middle, and the first one is so short. That's the thing, and it's so much better on PS4. On PS3, it's not as good. So
I think I played. When did I play through 1 for the first time?
You would have played it on PS3 if you went back.
Maybe I did, but yeah, I guess so. I did play it on the 3, but I almost want to play through it myself, but like I don't want to subject her to that because it just doesn't resonate with me. And it's like, yeah, you get some like required reading almost, but at a certain point, like how much do you sacrifice by slowing down the plot to understand those
Would
tiny
you
things?
start Star Wars with Empire Strikes Back without A New Hope?
I feel like I could make that argument if you really wanted me to. But yeah, but that's the thing, because here's a better argument. Would you watch A New Hope without watching the prequels? Because it explains so much.
Yeah, but here's the thing with those prequels. Did you watch them with the like with the understanding that you know what's coming next, like you know what's coming up next because of the way they were released. It's why everyone always says that the worst way to watch those Star Wars movies is if you do like chronological order, because a lot of the power of Empire is the reveal that puts in your mind what happened to this guy.
Yeah.
And then the prequels are kind of written that way, knowing that they're leading you towards that.
Right.
So because that's the thing, like the big thing with Empire is I am your father. And
which,
then
I don't know if I like watched them too early because I never got like the reveal from that. I was just like, I thought he was lying the whole time.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing, like, whether he was lying or not, then Return of the Jedi confirms it.
It does, but that's the crazy thing, that he's just like, this guy was telling the truth the whole time? Because I watched Return of the Jedi way later than Empire Strikes Back.
I've heard this order of like, you do New Hope, you do Empire, and then do the prequels.
The prequels,
and then go to 6. Because like, you know how TV does that flashback, those flashbacks of here's how all of this happened after this big reveal. Right. So I did it once. Like, this is very interesting doing it that way. But yeah, it's again like Drake's fortune is just establishing the base, establishing you to care about the characters, to further develops it, and has so many inside references to the camera is busted anyway and all of that are things from the first game. I'm last year's model, like all of that is like things that if you had played the first one, it's like, I get it. And it just makes 3 and 4 resonate even more with the whole Sir Francis Drake thing when you see the original adventure trying to find Sir Francis Drake.
That's the only thing I'll concede, because it does give a good point of reference whenever he starts off trying to find Sir Francis Drake's treasure, and then it kind of falls away and two's almost like an unrelated adventure, but like the character work is there. That's why I almost thought it was such a good entry point for everything. But then
it really was, but
I don't want to. I'm afraid that I've gone too far into the plot of 2.
How far are you
after we finished? We got back to where the train was, and
you're halfway point.
Yeah. So we've like got into the point of like no return, at least for the second one. The question would be, do I go back to 1 between this and 3? But I
make it a further flashback. Make it a further flashback.
Like, I don't know if I want to go back even further, because like even then the lighting kind of struggles on the 5, just like you said, where I was having to really mess with like the brightness settings, and even now I have it set all the way up on the brightness just so that everyone's eyes aren't like pitch black. And like Drake's hair was like fully black as well, and it's just like the lighting wasn't doing it for me. So I'm like, at least if we get to 3 and then on to 4, I just want her to experience 4 and get away from like the datedness of all this. Because I never want her to like get to this point of like, okay, this is just like I'm getting lost, because she's so far removed from the gaming scene that I don't want her to be like, all right, this is.
It's why I said that the best way to experience the first one, put it in the very, 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 very easy difficulty and just blast through it. Yeah, and then just to kind of have that, just to have that base, especially for her watching. So
I'm gonna consider it, because if I get through the highs of 2, part of me really wants to go through 3.
I'll say this:
I really want 3.
2, ironically, is the one that ages the worst